My name's Ian, and I have a diagnosis of bipolar 2.
Hi, welcome to Bipolar Twin Flames. Now, Ian's my twin flame. For those of you
Yep.
who are into spirituality, will know what that means. My name is Lynn. I have bipolar 1 disorder. I'd like to start by saying, according to Google, what Google has, the main difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorders lies in the severity of manic episodes caused by each type. And for me and Ian, I think it's more than just that, just the
Yeah,
mania. There are other many differences between.
very definitely. And I think
Yeah.
one of the important things to emphasise is that as someone with bipolar 2, I have constant and really quite severe anxiety, which I don't think you have, do you?
No, I have anxiety on a very small scale.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm anxious before I go to sleep, which I used to take Clonopin for, which is actually a
yeah,
narcotic. Not good for you. Don't do it.
yeah.
But uh, we don't have anxiety the way bipolar 2 people have it. During my years of speaking with Ian, he's described instances where he has been so anxious and that he's actually been frozen to the point where
Yeah.
he can't leave the house. And I've never experienced anything like that before.
Absolutely, and it is it's like agoraphobia, really. It's really not being able to step over the threshold of the door. But the other thing I would say in terms of the differences is that Google description is quite pertinent in the sense that your manic episodes are far more severe or far or very different. And um i I suppose I would say my when I got my diagnosis of bipolar 2, my psychiatrist said to me, the reason I know you're not bipolar 1 is you don't walk down the street naked thinking you're Jesus.
No,
And
I've never done that.
no, I
Even though
know,
I
but
do think I'm Jesus, but no, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
but it's one of those things where I suppose your manic episodes are so severe you become hospitalized.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've never been hospitalized. I've been close, but the only time I was really close to being hospitalized was because I was in a period of depression
I
rather than,
remember that.
yeah. And I suppose um my take on it is that the my mania is gives me charisma, it gives me energy, it gives me an ability to take people into my under my wing and convince them to do things they might not do, and I stay up all night and I go out, and and it's all that sort of thing. But it's not I never become psychotic, or I don't know if you like the word, but delusional.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then the thing about delusions for
Mm.
a person with bipolar disorder, see, I don't know of anyone else who suffers from those kind of delusions. It's not like
Mm.
I believe that it's happening. So,
Mm.
when in the whole world of mental health, when someone, especially someone who has schizophrenia, might say,
Yeah.
who are you to decide what is in my world isn't believable? If things in my
Absolutely.
world are happening to me, and they're happening to me, and I see it and I believe it, who are you to tell me that it's not real?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, when it is in my world, it is in my mind, it is real to me. It is
Absolutely.
really real to me. And as long as I'm not hurting anyone, I, they have no
Yeah.
right to pump that much medication into a person when they're hospitalized. They just throw everything at you. Everything.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because my belief is it's about harm. It's about whether you're going to harm yourself, or or whether you're going to harm someone else. And if you're not going to do either of those two things, then I believe that you should be left to be alone in your world that you're experiencing. you know.
I want to touch on the subject of spirituality because
Yeah,
before this mental illness was discovered, I know the conditions in which most people who had problems like this, they were in sanitariums and they were locked away and they
yeah,
were tortured, killed, or worse. You know,
yeah,
in previous years. But there were also others that had a certain flair, like we describe in Armenia,
yeah.
who were seen as oracles or seers or future,
Yeah,
genies or
that's
gypsies, just that could see into the future. They were called seers. They were praised, and people traveled great distances to see them.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
difference. When some of my delusions, I could have been seen as that, you know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
because when I have these delusions and I'm in this world, my world, that's all the mania and all the craziness.
Mm, mm.
People believe me. I could talk about aliens. I could talk about Jesus. I could talk about, and I sit down and have a logical conversation with someone. People believe me. My
Yeah,
last
yeah,
hospitalization that I remember when I was in 2015, I have a very affinity to the weather. I
mm,
had this one room with these big bay windows, and I
yeah,
had the nurses and the PCs and all the PCAs. I had them thinking I could control the weather. It was incredible. Every morning I would sit there and just look out into the clouds and say, "Oh, this is going to happen," and that. I had them thinking I could control the weather. It was the craziest thing. They're the
yeah.
professionals, not me. So
This is it, and some of the most influential people have been bipolar. Um, we
Einstein,
are
Carrie
Einstein.
Fisher.
Yeah, yeah.
I know there are much
Over
others.
here we have Stephen Fry,
Yes, that's
um,
right.
who's a big figure in terms of making awareness of bipolar, much more prevalent. Yeah, so it is something, and it does give you a huge amount of energy and actually intelligence. I think it sharpens your intelligence, mania. You
Oh,
know?
you become more focused,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
focused.
yeah,
You become more focused on an idea or a passion. The thing about mania, it makes you really passionate about what you believe, and you could sit there and you could actually write a whole book in one night. You'll sit there and just start. You'll be at your
yeah.
computer and you just write and write and write, and you're like, oh shit, this is great. But then when you come down from the mag episode, it's like, what the hell did I just write? It don't make no
Well,
sense.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't invalidate what you wrote. But I think what for me, one of the things for me is I wouldn't say I'm rapid cycling in the sense that I go through intense periods of mania and depression on a sort of weekly basis, but I'm probably more rapid cycling than you are, because when I go up, there's an inevitable crash. You know, when
Mhm.
when I when my mania ebbs away, I go into a low, and this is something that I found out in therapy, actually. And this is what my therapist has said, and we've worked out between us, is that actually when you go high, you will go low.
Yeah.
You know, and that's and I don't. What would I say about the mania and the highs in terms of how I like it? I love. Well, if I'm honest, I love being manic because it
Hmm.
is the most intense and wonderful feeling. And when I really fear the depression, because the depression is the worst thing. It's awful. I know that the mania damages me in the sense that I'm going to have an inevitable low, and I'm going to spend a lot of money, and
Yeah.
I am going to wake up in whatever 3-4 days time and think, oh God, there's another package from Amazon arriving, and I don't even know what it is, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the highs actually, and I'll be honest here. I have spent time using, let's say, illicit substances in order to chase the highs, because they don't replicate it, because there is nothing like that natural high. But there's something in me that craves that high, and I think it's a bit of an addiction, That high can be really addictive because it feels so good, and you just want to chase it and do it again. And that's why a lot of people, including myself, when I start to become manic, I stop taking my medication. Because people say it's because, well, you feel you don't need it because you're high and you feel confident. And there is something in that. But actually, I think it's more that I almost make a conscious decision not to take my medication, because I know then I'll go high and I'll love it.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually the opposite of that. I don't chase the high. The thing is, I don't. I don't know if this happens with other bipolar 1 people, but we don't even notice the dip. Like there's no dip. I mean, you feel the dip when you come down into depression, but I've never been so high that I came down so low. It's never happened. I mean, it happened only once when I was in and out of the hospitals a lot in 2004, and I finally just threw off all the medication. I kind of went through withdrawal because I didn't take the medication, so it just pushed me into a depression. That's a little different than just coming off of a high. But I never chased the high. I don't really. It doesn't matter. You see, being high on mania and being myself is the same thing. I get the mania high. I get high talking to people. I get high talking to a stranger. I get high meeting someone new. And the same thing as the mania high for me.
As well, you get high with the weather.
Yeah, I do.
That's something that I'm really interested in, and it's something that I've noticed with you, is you have this incredible spiritual connection to the weather and to the environment, And
I always, I one of the things I was telling my dad when I was hospitalized, it was like I would tell him, I would say things like, "Dad, I'm the earth. Dad, I'm the universe," and he would sit there and look at me like, "Oh my God, what the hell is he saying?" But I feel in the summer I went bare feet into the sand. I go bare feet into the dirt. I do feel an intense connection with the earth and the weather. I do. I always have. I remember we had the perfect storm in 1991 that came through here on the East Coast, and they made a big movie about it and everything. But I remember that storm. I remember Hurricane Grace, and the hurricane that came after it was Hurricane Hugo. I was 11 years old, Ian, and I stared up at the sky. We just came out of the grocery store, me and my parents, and I stared up at the skies, and these big, puffy, cumulus clouds were racing across the sky. No one else noticed it. But me, they were racing across the sky. It was the most magnificent thing that I had ever seen, And that was the perfect storm. I remember it. I do remember it. And ever since then, I lived in the attic of our house. I would open up the window and see out into the sky. I would sit nights on the roof. It would just be me and the stars and the sky and the weather and everything.
It's interesting because I suppose the thing for me is when I was young, I had a fascination with fire and water.
Yeah.
And that's a very basic elemental thing. I can remember being in the bathroom at the age of probably, I don't know. Yeah. I was probably like 12 or something. And I'd stolen a box of matches from my parents' cupboard. And I made this boat out of paper, and I filled the basin with water, and I lit the boat on fire, and it was just incredible. I was there seeing fire and water together, and I also have a memory. My dad used to have fires out the back in the garden. He'd cut the trees and trim the bushes and stuff, and then he'd have a fire to burn what he'd cut down. And I was fascinated by it. I used to look into this fire, and I used to imagine this fire as another world. It was almost like I was imagining this alien planet in that fire.
Yeah, it's incredible. I can relate to that. There's something to be said when you're sitting down and you're looking at a fire burning. You're looking at the flames. You can see in the flames. You can literally see in the flames. You can let your imagination take you wherever it wants to go.
And isn't it interesting that our podcast name is actually Bipolar Twin Flames?
Yeah, it is. It's just,
but that's true. There is something about the intense burning of a fire that is very like mania.
Yeah. And as you had the akin to the fire, I'm akin to the water, and that has a lot to do with me being. I was big into astrology for many years, but I believe the things that they say about me. I'm a Cancer. I'm in June 26th. But I'm at the equinox of the calendar. I fall like right in the middle of everything. It's not really. It just hit summer. Spring was right around the corner, fall was right around the corner, winter's all the way at the end. I'm directly in the middle of the calendar. And the Mayans used to believe in numerology and stuff like that. I'm directly in the middle. So, I experience everything. And you say the thing about fire. I sit there I've been sitting there with a lighter. I don't smoke anymore. I used to smoke some Marlboro lights. I used to smoke, but I don't smoke anymore. But my lighters, I would sit there and like flick the lighter on. And just flick it on and off, and I would put my hand above the fire, see how long it would take before it burns. I just like sit there and play with fire. It's weird. It's weird people do that. I do the same thing. It's weird people do that.
I've done that as well. And again, I think it's about that. There's something there. It's about looking at the flame, which is really intense and really aesthetic and attractive. But it's also when you put that lighter under your hand, it's also like experiencing mania, because it's experiencing an intense sensation on your hand.
Yeah.
I suppose that takes me to something which, is a difficult area, and I know it's something that I don't think have done, but self-harm.
No, I've never done self-harm. No.
And it's interesting. People associate self-harm with depression.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when I self-harmed, I always did it when I was high.
Interesting.
And the reason for that, I think, is that there's something about that pain, that sensation that brings you back down to earth. And there's almost an unconscious impulse towards bringing yourself back down to being level, because you're feeling something primal, you're feeling a primal pain. But that's, I think that's something maybe we can talk about, more extensively in a less general podcast. But I mean, it's interesting. It is sensation. I think a lot of it is about real, natural, physical sensation.
Well, physical sensation comes with, what bipolar people, when we're doing like a real general thing, but one of the similarities between bipolar 1 and 2 is how we view sexuality. What happens to us?
Hypersexuality.
Hypersexuality is like, and people, and I've seen comments that jab at people with mental health issues. They're like, you ask a guy, has he ever slept with a crazy girl? It's like, oh, the crazy girls are the best girls to have sex with.
Yeah.
It's like they say that. They say that. And I'm not here to condone that, because of course I'm great, but but it's like they say that crazy sex is the best sex to have.
And actually, it's for me as a guy, I think it's about just feeling, and obviously the intensity of sex is again something that's akin to mania.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling, that sensation over and over again. You're chasing the dragon.
You're chasing the dragon, and the thing is, a person with our type of condition, both of us, we're usually not satisfied by one partner. We have to go out there and sleep with everybody.
Yeah.
It's not like you can say, oh, it would be great if you're hypersexual and you're married. It'd be great for husband and wife, but you don't understand that a person with bipolar, sometimes when they're very hypersexual, it can actually break up marriages.
Oh, definitely.
It can definitely break up marriages.
Relationships can be absolutely ruined by this condition, because we find it very difficult to put down boundaries around things like sexuality.
Well, not only that, the obsession comes to see the obsession. Which when we're doing a very general podcast, so we'll discuss all these subjects in detail later on. But when another aspect of that rolls into sexuality is the obsession. One of the most common things I've ever heard was, "Oh, that bitch be crazy. She bipolar. She texting me too much." That's what she texting me too much. She bipolar. That's what I hear and I see everywhere. And
that's what I hate that, because it's a devaluation of the condition. If someone gets a bit out of order, people say, she's bipolar, and I hate that, because I just think, no, she's not, because if she was bipolar, you'd fucking know about it, really. She wouldn't just be arguing; she'd be chopping your head off. It's. And and saying that, I don't mean to characterize people with, because that's another thing. I don't mean to characterize people with bipolar as being violent, because we're not actually.
But I've actually, I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I'll speak for myself. When I've been bipolar, I've been verbally violent. Verbally. Not like sitting here and breaking up shit and just, I did crash into a couple of cars, but whatever. It's not like I went out there, I picked up a gun and started shooting. I didn't do anything like that. It's more like verbal violence, verbally combative, and very combative, and doesn't listen to authority. There have been many cops that I've cursed out over the years. It's just not right, just all this crap.
Well, I think we don't like authority, do we?
No.
Bipolar people. I think we find it difficult to deal with that sort of normality, that regulation that the police, for example, bring to us. And I've always, I'm the same. I've been, I've had plenty of arguments with the police. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's our broad description of bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. We'll have many more subjects later on. Maybe next week we'll come back with another one.
Absolutely. This is just we've done sort of 25 minutes, and that's a brief taster of what's to come.
Yes. We'll try to keep all our podcasts around 30 minutes, just to not overwhelm everybody. You can you can listen to us, when you're going on to work, when you're going to school, and just if you have a half an hour here or there, spend some time with us. Okay.
And the other thing I would say is, we're going to post this, so I would ask people not to be disrespectful in their comments, but I would invite people who are bipolar, or even people who have experience of people who are bipolar, or are just interested in the subject, just to get in touch with us, because it would be great to be able to perhaps, read some messages and discuss those on podcasts as well.
That would be great. We're bipolartwinflames@gmail.com. That's bipolartwinflames@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.